Hello and welcome everyone. If you're new to my channel, my name is Marcella. I'm an attachment practitioner trained by Tice Gibson in the Personal Development School. I have a bachelor's degree in business and I'm the owner of the Fearless Love Academy, where I help women change their mindset to change their love story after trauma. Now, I used to be a fearful avoidant, so I am very familiar with everything that comes along with this attachment style. And what I'm going to be talking about today is going to be the trust core wound that fearful avoidants tend to have that really block them and cause a lot of sabotage in their relationships and in their life as a whole because they really struggle to trust. Now, when we think in terms of trust, I want to break it down for you that there are three C's to what trust really is. This is consistency. Things are really consistent in what is going on. Consideration. This means that you are feeling like you are being considered and you matter and like you're taken into consideration when people are making choices or anything that could possibly affect you, right? And then we have congruency. Congruency is what people say and what they do really align. So, those are the three C's when it comes to trust. Now, early in childhood, right, for the fearful avoidant as they were growing up, they usually didn't have a lot of consistency, consideration, congruency. And this causes the fearful avoidant child to grow up with a lot of trust core wounds, to feel very unsafe in their relationships as a whole. And so our brain kind of initially receives its programming and belief systems throughout early childhood most of the time. So, this is where we are initially gathering our beliefs about the world and what it means to give and receive love and to be in intimate and close relationships. Our brains are wired through pretty much repetition plus emotion. This is how the subconscious mind is imprinted, and this is where all of our programming or all of our habitual pieces of self really exist. And so, as a child, right, you're going through usually repetitive experiences. This is firing and wiring neural networks in the brain, and you're picking up this belief that says, I am being betrayed. How does this happen? Let's say, as a child, the fearful avoidant goes to their caregivers. For needs, and sometimes their caregivers are showing up, and other times they're really not. And this is a form of inconsistency, right? And also a lack of consideration because nobody is considering my needs. And so this causes the fearful avoidant child to go, oh my gosh, I'm being betrayed and I cannot trust people that I love. Let's say, like, another example, right? When you're growing up, maybe you have a caregiver who's like an addict or they're struggling with depression and they have a lot of their own things going on. And maybe like they make you these promises, right? Like, hey, things are going to get better. And that thing that you really want, don't worry. I'll get the money together and we'll get that. Just don't worry, right? And then they never circle back around to that. And you never, like, that promise is never fulfilled. This is incongruency in childhood. This means that what they say and what they do does not align. And so what's happening is that the child mind then begins to wonder, like, why aren't they showing up for me? And then they give it meaning. They give that situation meaning and they go, oh my goodness, I'm being betrayed and I can't trust, right? So this is how we can initially pick up that programming or this belief system that says, I cannot trust people that I love. Like, it's very unsafe. So they made all these associations to what it means to trust someone. And you might notice that as a fearful avoidant, you kind of have this coping mechanism of being hyper vigilant in your relationships, right? Maybe you notice that you're very hyper attuned to people, where you're able to really pick up on subtle changes in the relationship. Maybe you can pick up in inconsistencies and patterns, or you're really hyper focusing on incongruencies, like, hey, they said they were going to be here at 5 and they're here at 6. What is going on? Why are they doing that? And you really value these things in your adult life. Why? Because you have a trust core wound, and you might even notice that you are really sensitive to pattern changes or to changes in your partner's facial expression or their tone of voice or or the way that they're operating when they come home one day to another. If there are any kind of subtle changes, fearful avoidants are very hyper tuned to this because it's kind of what has become their coping mechanism. So it's this idea that if I can pick up on these changes by being very hyper attuned, I can pick up on the possibility of what I'm interpreting in my environment of potentially going to be betrayed, then I can kind of prevent it from happening again and avoid that pain all over again. But the thing is that usually when you're operating in this sense, you're usually giving a lot of weight to every single little micro expression that is happening, even if it doesn't actually mean anything. You know, we're all human beings and it's normal from time to time for people to forget things, right? Maybe your partner says, yeah, I'm going to be home at 5 p.m. and then they don't get home till 6 and they forget to call you. The fearful avoidant mind can jump into all these thought processes and go down this rabbit hole of negative thinking patterns just because certain things aren't lining up. And it's very important to get a grasp on this behavior because you don't want to be in this cycle where you're being so hypersensitive to every single little thing, and then you're having all these thoughts activated and then you're taking action based on that because you have this trust core wound. If the trust core wound wasn't there, you wouldn't be hyper focusing on all these things. You wouldn't be so sensitive to changes, and you wouldn't be usually like questioning your partner a lot or being very sensitive to anything that is not really consistent showing up in your relationship dynamic. So, what I also want you to know is that when you have a trust core wound, it shows up in the form of being very triggered when these types of things happen. Like you might notice that you can get a 10 out of 10 triggered when there's something like a relationship change. Let's say your partner texts you every morning while you are at work, and one morning he doesn't text you for whatever reason. The fearful avoidant mind can instantly feel like what is going on, and they have all these thoughts activated because we have something called the BTEA equation, right? So it's like beliefs lead to thoughts, thoughts lead to emotions, emotions lead to actions. BTEA: beliefs, thoughts, emotions, actions. So you can think of the belief as like the core wound. I am going to be betrayed, right? When you have this belief, anything that triggers the potential that your brain is saying is similar to situations that mean you could be betrayed again, your brain goes, "Oh my gosh, there's an inconsistency." It touches on that core wound. It's already a belief, like you believe you are going to be betrayed. It triggers all these thoughts to come up immediately because the BTEA, remember? So thoughts might be coming up when your partner doesn't text you one day. What are they doing? Why didn't they text me? That is weird. Like what's going on with them? Are they talking to someone else? Are they losing interest? And then what happens is when we are thinking thoughts, this creates an emotional response in our body. So you might notice that when you are thinking these thoughts, you start feeling very insecure. You might even feel a little hurt, and then maybe even a little angry. And then the A part of the equation, you might take action based on that. Not you might, but most likely you take action based on whatever was going on internally at the time. So let's say, lunchtime rolls around and you haven't heard from your partner, you might call them and be like, "What's going on? Like, why didn't you call me this morning? Like, that's weird, right?" And you might even be kind of like harsh with your words, or you might hang up on them, or you might kind of like pull away and be like, whatever, and ignore them for a while because you're feeling very unsafe and you've been triggered. So when you have a core wound, right? You have the BTA equation. So beliefs, thoughts, emotions, actions. It happens in that order. Imagine what's going to be happening throughout the course of your life. We are going to be taking actions and feeling and thinking based on our core wound or our belief. And so if you can imagine your whole entire life when you've been feeling triggered so many times, I want you to understand that our core wounds our brain stores these things in kind of like this filing cabinet. So what happens is like when a core wound or a belief is triggered, you might notice that you feel like a 10 out of 10 triggered for something that isn't that big of a deal. And why does this happen? This happens because in our brain, right, it kind of stores things in that filing cabinet, like I just mentioned. And so when you are experiencing something that is similar to past events that you've picked up, like I'm going to be betrayed, and you start interpreting what is going on as I am being betrayed, well, your brain kind of sort of opens up this filing cabinet and it floods not only the emotion from that time that you're feeling right now of I'm being betrayed, but it kind of opens this drawer up and it floods all the emotion from every single past time that you felt like you were being betrayed, as well as this moment, and you're experiencing all of that at once, which is why it's very common to feel very triggered over like little situations because it's touching on these wounded parts of you. So, if this is something that you want to get a grasp on, I very much recommend. Why? Because you're always operating out of your wounds, out of your core wounds, until you get a grasp on this. And this applies to things like I'm going to be abandoned, I'm not good enough, right? They're kind of like showing up in extremes in our life. And then we're having all these thoughts and we're having all these emotions based on that. And we're feeling drained throughout the course of our lives until we can kind of pluck them out at the root of where they exist, which is in the subconscious mind. And you might say, what's the subconscious mind, right? Our subconscious mind is responsible for 95 to 97% of all of our actions, emotions, and decisions. And our conscious mind is only responsible for 3 to 5%. So these belief systems live within our subconscious mind and they're automatic processes. They are kind of like what's running the show, what's running you in your day to day life. And if you don't get a handle on them, at the level they exist, then they're going to keep reappearing. Why? Because it's not like you're choosing to wake up, right? And be like, I want to feel like I'm going to be betrayed today. I want to feel like I'm going to be abandoned. I want to think all these negative thoughts and then take myself down this emotional roller coaster and then take action in my relationships that are kind of unhealthy based on these wounded parts of ourselves. Now, if this is something that you are looking to get a hold on to, you can contact me in the description box below. I will have the link to my website. A very big thing that I also have is a fearful avoidant blueprint, where it kind of gives you all the characteristics and traits and how fearful avoidants operate in relationships when it comes to conflict, how they communicate, some of their very high level needs. And that is only $10. I also have a course that I'm selling for only $39.99, or no, $29.99 actually, where you can learn how to actually reprogram these core wounds. I go over a very strong tool that we use called auto suggestion, where we kind of use the principles of reprogramming the subconscious mind to deprogram these things out for your greater good. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I will see you next time. God bless.